Have you ever wanted to know what the best speed gun is out there? How to measure the speed of your serve, the velocity? What's the best way to do it? How does it work? How does the radar system work? What are things that can cause inaccuracies in speed gun measurement? Well, if so, today's your show. We'll be talking about speed guns on the Prodigy Maker Show, episode 85. Just a reminder, on the Prodigy Maker Show, we have a 3-set format, just like a tennis match. The first set is the player spotlight, where I talk about players who are on the rise, players who I coach, who I'm watching on the Pro Tour, the junior circuit, who I think have a bright future. The second set is our deep dive into the main topic of the show. And our third set is parting words of wisdom for the week. Thanks, enjoy the show. So in set number 1, we do a player spotlight. And I wanted to spotlight a junior player this week. Her name is Sophia Hubert, and she's from France and the United States. She's French American. She's been training with me for the last 2 years, and she's really a rising star. She's actually one of my students who I train every day here at the Academy. And on the player spotlight, I will each episode talk about different junior players, maybe pro players that I see rising up. But in this case, Sophia's a junior player. She's 10 years old. And she's about 60 in New England right now in the 12 and unders, but she's rising very fast, and she's on track to be one of the top juniors in New England. And I know for sure she'll be one of the top juniors in the United States. So that's going to happen real soon. And Sophia, today we just wanted to congratulate you on all your hard work and let you know that you are in the player spotlight. And I'm proud of you. I know you personally, obviously, and I think you have a really bright future. One of the strengths for Sophia is she's extremely consistent. And I think that anyone who's listening, whether you're a parent or a coach or a player, if you want to become great at tennis, you have to be very, very consistent. You have to be willing to work day in and day out, sacrifice your free time, sometimes sacrifice things you might want to do outside of tennis for the daily grind of training. And that's something that Sophia it's one of her best talents, is that her consistency and her work ethic, and she comes to the court every day without complaints. And I think that when you see a young kid who's able to do that, if they can maintain that for many, many years, what they can achieve is phenomenal. It's like magic, and it's combustible. The player can blow up in a good way. They can blow up and become a great prodigy and eventually a professional player, if they're willing to put in that professional work and have that work ethic from a very young age. I remember the saying from Pato Alvarez, where he says, it's incredible what you can accomplish with a player when they put in daily consistent work. That daily consistent work over time, it just leads to greatness. So Sophia, you are the player spotlight this week, and I'm proud of you for all your hard work and your consistency. Okay, here we go with set number 2. We're gonna dive in to the sports science research this week, and the research is on speed guns and radar guns for measuring ball speed. And in this case, usually the speed gun is used for measuring service speed, which is a very important way to measure progress and load monitoring and the intensity level and the effectiveness of your technique teaching for kids and adults who are learning to serve. And it's a great way, a great tool to use on the tennis court with your players. So if you have a kid, if you have a student, if you're a coach or a parent, having a radar gun that's accurate can be very beneficial to not only motivating, but measuring whether your child or your student or yourself, if you're a player, if you are improving with your technique and developing more power. So I just happened upon this incredibly interesting article by the author's name is Douglas Jordan, and he's a PhD, he's a professor at Sonoma University, I believe. And his article was published in the Society for American Baseball Research, the Baseball Research Journal, in the spring 2022. So it's a relatively recent journal article. And it's just a fascinating article about radar guns and their accuracy and how radar systems work in terms of measuring speed. And I just thought I'd share that with you. And all of this can be applied to tennis. And I think it was very helpful for parents and players and coaches who are interested in measuring the speed of their players serves, or you can also measure the speed of ground strokes and things like that. You can also use the radar gun for work in the gym, and as the author alludes to, you can use it for medicine ball work and measuring power development as well. So really interesting. And the author talks about how there are three main areas he'll discuss in the literature. He talks about what is driving the demand for radar guns. Apparently they're in high demand right now, and not only in baseball, but in many other sports as well. He discusses factors affecting the accuracy of radar gun readings, and I think you'll find that really interesting. There's some of the math and science involved in it, and a comparison of some widely used radar guns. And at the end of the show, or at the end of this segment, I'll talk about the guns that he recommends, and there's one that's common and popular on the tennis court, and I think that's the one that I'll sort of steer you towards. Or you could get one that's used for baseball, but there's more of a traditional gun. But at the end of the segment, I'd just like you guys to have a good understanding of how radar guns work, and some good choices that you could use to measure the speed of your students or yourself when you're serving. So what is creating the demand for radar guns? Well, Dr. Jordan says that it's all about data, and we live in this data-driven world where it's the Internet of Things, where we have sensors for everything, and we can monitor and retrieve data from all these different devices around us. And sports is no different. Data and smart devices and sensor technology, these things are transforming the way we train and measure and coach sports. And it's happening slowly but surely in the tennis world. It's happening in baseball and football, along with other technologies like analytics, video analytics, not only for technique but for tactics. And there's just, technology is changing the way that we coach and we monitor and we measure athletic endeavors. So you have to understand that how much times are changing and how sophisticated coaching is becoming as the decades go on, and as technology becomes more and more embedded in the coaching world of not just baseball or tennis, but of many sports. So we live in this data-driven world, and Dr. Jordan talks about how there's a big demand for measuring speed. One of the reasons why people want to know speed is because it's a big indicator of your athletic ability, and it can help predict whether you can be successful as a professional. So in baseball, Dr. Jordan talks about how, as a scout, one of the first things baseball scouts look for is how fast someone can throw, obviously for pitchers. And there are many times where there'll be a pitcher who has excellent technique and throws very well. It's a very accomplished pitcher, but at the end of the day, if the data shows that they can only throw an 83-mile-per-hour fastball, that pitcher is not going to be recruited for the big leagues, for the professional baseball leagues. And there's some interesting research in tennis as well that relates to this, where we know that the best players in the world, the top 100 players in the world, tend to have higher average serve speeds than lower ranked players. So I think this is very applicable to the tennis world, that we can use speed and the measure of the velocity of the serve as a very simple metric for judging and gauging whether a kid or an adult has the potential to be a pro. Or, we can probably develop some very good normative data and benchmarks for where kids and adults should be serving and what speeds they should be serving. I don't think we have that at this time, but that would be a very interesting project, just to take simple velocity data, get some benchmarks about where people should be at certain ages and stages, and that would help give us a good predictive tool for whether a player can make it at a professional level down the road. So I think that's an important point here, where you can use speed, and the measurement of speed has to be accurate, but you can use the measurement of speed to predict a player's potential. And you can use also, Dr. Jordan talks about how you can use radar gun data in the gym. You can use it to measure the velocity of movement, like for example, when you're throwing a medicine ball. And You can use it on the court as a coach to help give you feedback, and you give your players immediate feedback as to how they're performing. So players usually like to have the speed gun on the court because it motivates them to serve harder and harder, although sometimes to their detriment, they may lose control of their technique, so you have to be careful with that when you're using a speed gun on the court. But in general, it's a very good motivating tool, and sometimes players just don't like to serve because it's boring. And if you set up a speed gun there and you capture the data, and even if you display it in real time, that can be very, very motivating and really excite people to go and serve a lot, which can be a very positive thing. So the second reason, the second area that Dr. Jordan talks about, and I think you'll find this very interesting if you like science and physics, or you may want to skip ahead, but obviously this is a sports science review. So the accuracy of radar gun readings is obviously crucial, and there are many aspects that can affect the accuracy of the reading. The most important to understand is called drag, and drag is the air resistance as the ball is traveling. You have the air resistance that's slowing the ball down. And so Dr. Jordan talks about how depending on where you measure the ball, the incoming ball along its path, the amount of drag that occurs during that time frame before you measure the speed is going to reduce the speed of the ball. So if you measure, in this case, baseball, as the ball is coming over home plate, if you take the gun and shoot the ball crossing home plate, there's a significant amount of drag that's occurred through air resistance that slows down the speed of the ball. In tennis, when someone serves, as that immediate moment where the ball leaves the strings, that's where you want to capture the velocity of the ball so you can reduce the effect of drag. If you measure the speed of the ball as it's crossing the net, or when it gets to the other side to the returner, you're going to have significant loss of speed due to drag. So that's the major aspect that can affect the accuracy of radar readings. So if you're trying to set up a speed gun at home or on the tennis court or at your club or your public park, you got to make sure that the most important thing is to try to shoot the radar signal as close to the initial impact as you can. And that's what Dr. Jordan talks about. Dr. Jordan says that a 90-mile-per-hour pitch will lose 10 miles per hour before it crosses the plate due to drag. So that's pretty significant. A pitch released at 100 miles per hour will lose 12 miles per hour when it crosses home plate. So you can just think about the distance between home plate and pitcher's mound, and that's a significant, that's a 10% or more decrease in speed, only due to the drag effect of air resistance. Dr. Jordan says it takes a Porsche 918 Spyder 2.4 seconds to go from 0 to 60, and a baseball will decelerate in the same amount of time, approximately the same amount of time, 25 miles per hour per second, as a high-end sports car accelerates. So it's a pretty significant effect that it can have on a reading, which I thought was interesting. So where the radar gun picks up the pitch along its flight, or in this case the serve, we're talking about tennis, has a major impact on the velocity reading. And that's really important to understand. The rapid deceleration of the baseball is the primary reason there can be a difference in radar gun readings. A gun that measures the speed of the ball soon after it leaves the pitcher or the server's racket will register a higher speed than a gun that measures the speed of the ball as it nears the other side or home plate in terms of pitching metaphor. Or a pitching situation. Where the radar gun measures the speed is a function of the physics of the signal emitted by the gun, the reflected signal received at the gun, and the sophistication of the measurement of the algorithms inside the radar. So those are the main factors that affect the accuracy of any speed radar gun. The physics of the signal emitted by the gun, the reflected signal received at the gun, and the sophistication of the algorithm that's used in the gun itself, in the computer software programming itself. The accuracy of the radar guns is impacted by the margin of error in addition to drag. So you have drag as a major component that can slow down the ball speed, and then you have every radar gun has a margin of error. So Dr. Jordan recommends you find a radar gun with a 3% or less margin of error, and he recommends a few different radar guns, and we'll go over those 3 guns that he recommends. But essentially, the best radar guns that we have available for the average person, maybe not inside a laboratory, are 3% or less margin of error. So that means for a 100-mile-per-hour serve or baseball throw, the range of speeds that you'll get from the gun are 97 to 103, which is still pretty significant margin of error, if you ask me. There's a radar that Dr. Jordan recommends that has a 1% margin of error, and that's the one I would probably go with for you guys, and we'll talk about that. Dr. Jordan does say that the gun with the smallest amount of error is called the Pocket Radar Smart Coach, which is promoted for tennis, and you can get a Pocket Radar. There's different options that you can get for the Pocket Radar Smart Coach, and I noticed that there's one with a display that looks really cool. It caught my eye. I'm going to be checking it out. I might even do a YouTube video on like a unboxing, and because I'm going to install one here at the club so we can measure all the serve speeds of all my players who are here, all the campers that are here visiting, all the athletes who come here. I want to measure serve speed. I want to do it really accurately. Even 3% error I think is too much for me. So the Pocket Radar Smart Coach is one of the ones that Dr. Jordan recommends. The other 2 are called the Stalker Sport 2 and the Stalker. There's 2 Stalker speed guns. They're made for baseball. They are actually like a gun that you shoot. The Stalker Pro 2 and the Stalker Sport 2. And the 3rd radar gun that he tested is the Pocket Radar Smart Coach. And we'll go into more detail later, but all 3 of those have a 3% or less margin of error. The Pocket Radar Smart Coach has a 1% plus or minus margin of error, which is excellent. So you have the drag, which significantly reduces the speed of the traveling ball. You have the margin of error of the gun itself, and all guns have a margin of error. You want to minimize the margin of error. And you also have the angle of error or cosine error. So if you like geometry, we get into a little math here. It's very important that when you shoot the radar device, that it's in line with the traveling direction of the ball. So you can have the radar gun behind the ball, so behind where someone's serving or throwing, or in front, but you want to be on as much as possible on the line of where the ball's traveling. If the radar gun is shooting from any kind of angle off of the line that the ball's traveling, there's a cosine error, and many guns do not adjust for the cosine. Some do adjust for cosine error, but some do not. But there is a pretty significant difference in ball measurement speed depending on the angle that the radar is in relationship to the traveling ball. So if you want to get accurate readings, you have to shoot the radar so you pick up the ball as close to as possible with the impact or the ball release, whatever you're measuring. That's to minimize drag. 2, you have to have a gun that has a low margin of error, so it has to be a high quality gun. And 3, you have to be on as much as possible in line with the direction that the ball is traveling, because you may have a significant cosine error if you are shooting the moving target off from an angle. So I just thought that was really interesting too. So Dr. Jordan says, all radar guns direct radio waves into a narrow focused beam. And if the radar beam is aimed at an angle relative to the flight path of the ball, a measurement error is introduced. So I just thought that was, some interesting geometry. And if you ever took geometry in high school and wondered if you'd ever use cosine function, here cosine comes into play when you're measuring the speed of a baseball or a serve. So Dr. Jordan says, for example, at 5 degrees angle to the flight line of the ball, which is not that much, 5 degrees, cosine error reduces the measured speed by only 0.4%. So that's not that much, 5 degrees. That means a 100-mile-per-hour pitch will read 99.6 on the radar gun. Not bad. But the cosine error becomes significant at larger angles. The error increases to 1.5% at 10 degrees. So it increases not at a standard rate, but it increases more exponentially here. The cosine error is 3.4%, much more significant at only 15 degrees. So at 15 degrees to the path of the ball, you have a 3.4% error. 10 degrees seems like a pretty small angle, but the gun operator only needs to be about 12 feet off the line of travel at a distance of 70 feet from the pitcher's mound to be at an angle of 10 degrees. So 12 feet, imagine a pitcher's mound and home plate, 12 feet from the home plate shooting would give you a 10-degree error, cosine error. And that means that a 100-mile-per-hour pitch will read 98.5 on the gun due to the cosine error. So that's pretty significant difference in speed, diminishment of speed, an inaccurate reading from just 12 feet standing outside the line of the pitch, not being directly behind home plate measuring. So consider that. Remember, you have drag, you have the margin of error of the gun itself, and you have cosine error, the measurement angle error. Dr. Jordan also mentions that there can sometimes be interference with radar guns, which can give spurious and erroneous readings. The police refer to these as ghost readings. The interference can often come from cell phone towers, fluorescent lights, television monitors, and power transformers. So just be aware that sometimes interference can happen, but you probably see major interference with the reading, and you would know that it would be pretty substantial. You know, it probably wouldn't be a hidden, you know, it wouldn't be a difficult reading to interpret where it would fool you, you know. So, number 3, comparison of velocity readings from commonly used radar guns. Let's get to the bottom line. You have the Stalker Pro 2, you have the Stalker Sport 2. Those are the 2 most popular baseball guns that scouts use and things like that. The Stalker Pro 2, as of the publishing of this article, was over $1,400. It's quite expensive. The Stalker Sport 2 is only $600, but has a very similar accuracy ratings. And the Pocket Radar, does it say the cost of the Pocket Radar? I think it does. The Pocket Radar Smart Coach they have 2 options. One is the Ball Coach at about $300, and the Smart Coach at about $400. And I believe regarding the Pocket Radar, that doesn't include the display. You may have to purchase a separate display. I think the display is really critical for tennis. If you have athletes who are serving, number 1, they have to get in the right alignment with the radar that you set up. So remember, you don't want to have cosine error, and make sure the radar's pointed and shooting in the beam in a direction, to a location that minimizes drag, right? And then you want to have a really good radar. So the Pocket Radar to me seems like a great choice because it's 1% margin of error. You can set it up on the tennis court, and then you can buy a separate display so that every time there's a readout, every time there's a reading, it shows up as instant visual feedback for the servers. I think that's really, really cool. And that's the way I would try to do it. And there's also sometimes I also read that there are some apps that can connect to some radar systems. These are only 3 that were reviewed in this study, but there are some apps that can link a video monitoring with the gun readout. So there are some technologies now that you can purchase where, for example, every serve that you hit, you get a video clip, plus the speed gun readout, and those can be saved for future review and to track progress and things like that. So I thought that was kind of cool, the way, the idea of combining video analysis with a very accurate gun readout seems to me a positive way to use technology. So you have these three choices: Stalker Sport 2, Stalker Pro 2, and the Pocket Radar. And Dr. Jordan says that this newer system, the Stalker speed guns have been around in baseball for decades, and the Pocket Radar is a relatively new entry into the radar gun field, and he recommends it. He says they tested very well and they were very, very accurate. So Dr. Jordan closes the article by saying it's important to remember two simple facts about radar guns. First, because of the physics associated with the way guns work, there is always a margin of error associated with every radar gun reading. And the key is just to reduce that margin of error as best you can, and to reduce some of the other effects that could, negative effects on the reading that we talked about. The true velocity could be higher or lower than the reading. Second, accuracy varies from gun to gun. In general, the more expensive guns are reputed to be more accurate than the least expensive guns. However, just because a radar gun is more expensive does not necessarily mean it is more accurate. So this was these were his closing thoughts. It was a really cool article that I just stumbled upon. I think because somebody asked me on one of our YouTube videos, what's the best way to measure speed of the serve? And I wanted to do some of my own research for that. I want to buy a nice speed gun system for my club here for all the players. And I stumbled upon this research article by Dr. Jordan. I appreciate Dr. Jordan taking the time to write this article. So just a quick recap. Remember, you got to account for drag. You got to account for the margin of error of the gun. And you have to account for cosine error when you're getting radar readings, speed gun readings. And it seems like the Pocket Radar is an excellent choice. I'm going to go out online and see if there are any good ones available that come with an optional display, so I can have the instant readouts for my players on the court. Guys, if you have any questions about this sports science review, I took a baseball research article and I parlayed it. I connected it to the tennis world and how you could use this information for tennis. I think it will be really cool for your junior players, for anyone who's out there working on their serve technique, trying to see if something gives them more power. Now you can get objective data about whether the things you're working on are actually improving your serve speed, or it's just like, your coach says, yeah, that was faster, you're doing great. No, you can actually get the objective data now and know whether you're improving your serve or not. And the speed gun really helps to motivate players. If you have a group of players, you can make a competition out of it. You can really use the speed gun to help motivate players on the court. So I think it's a really valuable tool. This is an example of the way technology is infiltrating and embedding itself in the sport coaching world. And I think that we'll see, we're going to talk more and more on this show about the ways that different technologies are helping us coach in better ways and helping us measure the improvement and progress of athletes. Okay, welcome to set 3 on the show. In set 3, we talk about some wisdom for the week. So it's some wisdom that you can take with you and think about, food for thought. And because today's show is about technology and how technology is affecting the way we coach and influencing the way we work with players, I thought it would be appropriate to talk about a quote from Mark Kovacs. It's not a direct quote, but it's essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but Mark has said that in the world of coaching, the way we work with players is becoming more and more sophisticated. And it's a growing trend, and it's rapidly changing the landscape of coaching. That's basically the thrust from that Mark Kovacs is trying to tell coaches and people in the athletic training world, that we have to evolve and we have to learn and grow as coaches. And anyone in the sports arena, the sports world, needs to understand how and become more familiar with technology, the way technology is reshaping and changing the way we work with players and the way we analyze players. So Mark has said he's frequently discussed the growing sophistication of technology and analysis in sport. Mark has emphasized how advancements such as wearable devices, so wearables, 3D motion capture, and data analytics are used to help players train and perform. Kovacs highlights the importance of turning quantitative data into actionable insights, enabling both athletes and coaches to enhance their strategies effectively. Kovacs has talked about how these trends are making tennis training more precise and evidence-based, aligning with the needs of both high-performance professionals and even recreational players. So I think this idea of making training more precise is what Mark Kovacs is getting at. Making training more evidence-based, the way we teach, we can have more evidence behind what we're saying to players. That's very important. We can use technology to give us a lot of data. As we were talking about, taking the velocity, the speed of a serve is an important piece of data that we can use to help players and measure their progress. And so there's precision, coaching with evidence, using technology to gather data, and then try to make more educated decisions regarding our players based on evidence, based on research and technology, which gives us more information. So I think that is a very exciting, sometimes scary thing for coaches to consider. For me, it's exciting because I embrace technology. I enjoy learning about new technologies and how they work, and I'm interested in using those technologies on the court. But I think there's many coaches, for example, and tennis players who they don't really understand what's happening in the world of coaching, and they resist technology. Some people are Luddites in a way where they don't want to engage and learn the new technologies that are out there. So I'm very excited about wearables. There's all sorts of wearables that we can use to gather data, sensors, there's GPS monitoring, vests now that can tell you about a player's movements in practice and distance covered and intensity of movements and changes of direction and things like that. And there's accelerometers that can measure different attributes of athletic movement in practice. It's just all sorts of interesting technologies now, and not to mention the 3D or 4D motion capture systems that can quantify movements and technical using them for technical analysis. There's just all sorts of exciting technologies that are absolutely, we are in the process of we can see in real time as the decades go on, those technologies, that type of sophisticated approach is transforming the way we coach little by little. And it's right there in front of our eyes if we can all step back and just be like, wow, what's happening in sports right now? It's all of these things combined. It's AI, it's wearables, it's different ways to assess players, it's all these quantifiable measurements, it's video, it's the sophistication and advancement in video technology. It's supercomputing. All these things allow us to harvest and collect data and analyze it and then make better recommendations for our players. It's just very, very exciting, but it's also like a vast amount of information to try to, and it's a difficult technology sometimes to learn and understand. So I just think staying up to date on technology, using technology as best you can, using science and research to help your players, that's the future of coaching. And that's something that I want to embrace. And I encourage you guys, whether you're a parent, a player, or a coach, to embrace these trends as well. Don't be fearful and don't be closed-minded. Be open-minded to what's happening with technology, what's happening with science, and realize that this is completely going to change the way we coach and the way we train players and the way athletes are developed. And it's a good thing in the end. It's an exciting thing. But you have to stay with the cutting-edge information, and you have to stay up to date, and you have to keep learning and learning and learning. It's an exciting new world out there. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the program. As always, God bless. I'll see you on the next one.